Welcome, everyone, to the new episode of the End of Quantum Reality video blog. I am your host, Rick Delana, and today we are very happy to welcome a fundamental member of the team on the End of Quantum Reality documentary film, our director and co-producer and co-editor, not to mention the director of the principal,
and co-editor.
And co-editor of the principal.
I have to put that
in there. You can tell which one of us lives in Hollywood. The wonderful, the one-of-a-kind, the incomparable Katheryne KTEE Thomas, better known by us who know her and work with her as Mama Bear. How are you, KT?
I'm good, I'm good.
So glad you could come up.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. I know I'm never in front of the camera. I'm always behind filming Rick and Wolfgang and Bob and everybody.
That's right. You know? But this is your moment in the sun.
Right.
Try and get this woman on camera. I mean, pulling teeth is...
Well, I mean, I do have a vlog. I'm a plus size advocate too, on top of everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I do get in front of the camera for that. Me and my
But I think you're overcoming your prior reticence.
Yeah, I used to not want to be in front of the camera. And, my friend pulled me in front. She's like,
good for her.
I mean, in Hollywood, yeah, Delaney,
yes.
In Hollywood, we have to do that. It's more about a brand, which is, as the End of Quantum Reality, how I've taught you with the principle. It's not just a film; it's a brand.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And you know, the beautiful part of that is that, you know, we had no chance with the principle against the forces that were arrayed against us. We were just, you know, as I look back, and you know, I suppose, you know, we could spend this whole episode just on war stories from the principle.
Right.
But at least a couple of them seem to be in order here because, you know, we were targeted for destruction and absolute. I mean, we had the highest grossing single screen opening in America the weekend that we opened it. And they wouldn't even hold us over in the theater because we were the subject of a boycott by a political organization. Go figure. But what's remarkable is because of your brilliance, we not only overcame that, the principle has become sort of like a cult film all over the world now. I mean, it really has. You know, 5 years after the fact, the hysteria that greeted the film is sort of like completely blown away into insignificance. And the film remains, to this day, the single and only examination of the Copernican principle at a moment where it is, you know, coming into the greatest imaginable observational challenge. So that film marched right on through. I mean, I think in a certain sense, we were too stupid to know that we had been shot in the head. That we were supposed to just,
Well, I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You are.
And I do want to get this across because this is I haven't been able to talk about the principle.
Yeah,
and so
by all means.
This is something that I want to address the audience about. I've had a lot of people in Hollywood ask me, you know, do you think doing the principle and now the End of Quantum Reality has ruined your career? The one thing that I have to say about that, and I do want to answer that, my company and I as a director is everybody gets to have a voice. Doesn't matter, and no hate speech, you know, no racism, you know, things like that. But if it's a legitimate way to put something on film and do it in a way that everybody gets to have a say, then I'm in. And people who have talked about the principle, who went after the principle, even our narrator, who obviously said she didn't read the script, but we have her on camera saying she did. And by the way, she was one of my favorite characters in Orange is the New Black, and now I've refused to watch it since then. And, you know, she was Captain Janeway. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. So it really disappointed me that, as a woman, she kind of didn't get behind something because people were saying, oh, it's this way and it's this way. Everybody knows. You can go look it up and see anything. But when you actually watch the film, people come back and go, that's not what was in the news. You know, because he hired me for two things. One was to make everybody look like rock stars, because I come from a music video background.
That's right.
And very fast documentary filmmaking. And the other thing was to just allow people, everybody, to have a seat at the table to
Yes.
have a discussion. And when you came to me with that, I was sold. You know? And so that's what makes me sad, is that even to this day, we can't sit down. Everybody, Rick and I never see eye to eye on a lot of things.
That's so true.
You know? But we're both good people inside. And we can actually sit down and have a discussion without yelling and making names and saying that he's wrong or I'm wrong. I don't think it's about being wrong. I think what it's about is just being able to express your opinion without being attacked.
Yeah, well,
you know,
we're happy to be attacked.
Mm-hmm.
If we are wrong, or if someone can demonstrate that we have twisted or misrepresented something, I will be the first to own it, because, you know, the reason the principle 5 years after its release is still marching right along is because every one of the attacks upon it looks absolutely laughable, ridiculous now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once we put out Thought Crime,
Right,
everything got silent. There were no more attacks on the principle because we showed the footage. We completely blew up this ridiculous Captain Janeway and the Seven Cosmologists fairy tale.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen Thought Crime, it's on the Principal YouTube. And
Yeah.
I think it's on the Principal Facebook page too.
Yeah, it
correct?
is.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's a fascinating little 20-minute mini doc. You know, we had probably 100 million people read the Captain Janeway and the Seven Cosmologists fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, you know, 100,000 who saw Thought Crime.
Mm-hmm.
But it was enough. That documentary is so powerful in answering the fake news. Yeah, the fake news assault against the film. And it secured us our little beachhead. And the film stood or fell on its merits, and it has stood. So I'm very proud of that film. And believe me, it is just as relevant today, if not more so, than it was the day that we released it. So,
and I find it fascinating. I found when we were filming it, every scientist to me was fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
Physicist. Sorry, excuse me.
I loved making that film because I got to meet these guys. And, you know, it was extraordinary because I had to prepare. You know, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. You know, if I'm going to sit down with these guys, I got to do some homework so that I, you know, at least can ask a couple of interesting questions, hopefully. And the process of meeting these guys was such a pleasure to me. And I was very impressed by these guys, even the ones that I wouldn't share 0.1% of worldview with. When I was actually able to talk to them, it was fascinating and it was rewarding. And you are absolutely right. The only thing I knew we had to do in the principle was to give everyone a voice at the table. It is a colloquium. It is a symposium. It'll be a terrible movie unless everybody speaks with their own voice. But everybody does speak with their own voice, which is exactly what the media assault said they didn't.
Right.
When the film came out, they were completely humiliated.
You couldn't. Yeah. I mean, you looked at it and go, oh, wow, we were really wrong. You know?
Exactly.
And also, another thing is, I think the reason why we got such good interviews was that they underestimated you. I think that, and then when they actually sat down, they realized, oh, wait, you know, this guy has done his research.
I had no alternative. I don't know who it was who wrote this, but I remember reading it when I was fairly young, and it made a real impression on me. He was talking about Beethoven, because Beethoven went deaf, and it got to the point where the only way he could communicate was with his sketchbooks. And he was always carrying these sketchbooks, and he was always jotting down and working out musical ideas, and you could actually find the germ idea of the famous Ode to Joy, the choral movement of the next one. Freude, Schnell, Gott, one of the most famous melodies. He worked on that thing for 30 years.
Wow.
And somebody remarked on this and said that Beethoven reminded him of a fanatical peasant, gleaning each and every grain. And I thought to myself, you know, if Beethoven worked that hard, I better work at least that hard, because I ain't no Beethoven. And so I did try to do my homework. And, you know, even on the new film, I spent the better part of 2 years reading Dr. Smith's work, and talking with him on the phone pretty much every day to make sure that I understood the implications of what this man has accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I like to think that, like Avis, I try hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's another thing doing documentaries is that I see a lot of stuff that is one-sided.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of, even if it's something that I believe in, it kind of bores me because I want to hear what somebody else has to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, it's like, I might be wrong, you might be wrong, but unless I can put all the pieces together, you know, which is kind of what I did. I when we were editing, this is what I do in editing, in both, is you try to put pieces together so they fit, so they tell a story. And if you're just telling one story over and over again, it kind of gets boring. You know, you kind of want the back and forth. Like the principal was very back and forth. The End of Quantum Reality is a little bit different. It's a little bit slower paced. It has time to breathe. It's a little bit more, I call it like artistic.
Yeah, well,
you know,
because what we're dealing with in the End of Quantum Reality is truly a documentary of a man,
mm-hmm.
of a man whose life's work involves such a profound breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
A breakthrough that I would not be at all surprised if it takes another century or more to be fully appreciated and vindicated. And this is why we decided to make this film in a much more almost classical way.
Mm-hmm.
The film unfolds in almost like a classical work.
Well, he's more of a, and I think I was watching an interview you were doing recently. You know, he's regal.
Yeah, he is.
He has, even if you don't believe him, what he says, you respect the man.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
You know, and that's what drew me to it, is more of a respect for the man.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, I couldn't possibly agree more. I had been blown away by the profundity of his actual resolution of the quantum paradoxes, which to this day is still the single most astonishing breakthrough that I am aware of in the entire field. But when I met him, when I saw what a gentleman of the truly old school, this is not just a front, this is who he is.
Right.
And in the film you can see that not only is this who he is, but he has earned every single bit of that regal persona of his.
Correct.
By standing up through an entire lifetime for the things that he found to be true. He has a beautiful Sanskrit phrase that he learned from one of the Sanskrit books that he studied when he was deeply involved with the Hindus. And it is Satyam Evam Jayate. And that means truth alone conquers. The only thing Wolfgang Smith has ever cared about, insofar as I can tell, is to try, to try and penetrate. He's not interested in the leaves and the branches. Now, many scientists are very good at the leaves and the branches. Wolfgang Smith could not possibly care less about the leaves and the branches. He wants to get down to the taproot, that from which everything else proceeds in all of its complexity and ramifications. He wants to get to the root, the taproot. Satyam Evam Jayate, truth alone conquers. That has been the guide for his work, and that is why I am so profoundly happy that we were able to get this man right at the end of his life. You know, Wolfgang is a really interesting figure because he's almost unknown outside of a very small circle, maybe.
Which is some pretty high power people that know who he is. That's what, and I was like, really?
I mean, that 1,000 people, they are like, I mean, they are very, very, very heavyweight people. And, you know, this was a problem for me. Because when I first began to talk with you about, can we put this together? Can we do another one? Can we? Because we had no money.
And I knew you were like, I'm not doing another film. You were like tired.
I wasn't getting
I mean, filmmaking really takes it out of it.
Oh, no, it's a young man's game. Or a young woman's game.
Correct.
And if I didn't have you, I couldn't even
We'll
begin.
say a young person.
A young person's game, exactly. But when I started to realize who this man was and what he has accomplished, and again, for me, there is absolutely not the slightest question. This man has resolved the quantum enigma in a way that will change human history. I don't care if it takes 10 years or 50 years or 100 years. I myself am persuaded that I had to make this film because A, he has resolved the quantum enigma, and B, there's nobody else who's going to document him before he leaves this world unless I do. So I came to you and to our wonderful co-executive producer, John Schmeeding, and I said, John, please let me at least get an interview.
Correct.
And we did. And that's the germ from which the project eventually blossomed. And again, can you believe it? We're 2 for 2. We're getting a theatrical release
this
on
is
this
going
thing.
Theatrical, and
I can't believe it.
It's gotten a lot of. There's a lot of rumbling. We've kept a lot of things under wraps.
Yes, we have exactly the opposite of the
right. We were out. You guys were out of the gate on the principal, talking about it and telling everybody and keeping everybody up to date in that world. And now we're here, and it's going to open in about 2 months.
Yeah.
We have a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite exciting because it's not something you see every day. It's not, a humanistic war piece or something like a documentary like that.
Yeah, no car crashes, no love scenes.
It's really about a man's life.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what drew me to it, was not the science, not the hype around what we could possibly bring to the table, but really about telling the story of a man.
Of Wolfgang Smith, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you remember when we interviewed Christian Mioli from Arena Cinelounge, she's handling our North American theatrical distribution, opening January 10th, 2020. But Christian said exactly the same thing. I'm drawn to stories.
Correct.
And it was the story of this man that compelled me, that gripped me. And this, I think, is what makes this film potentially very, very interesting to audiences beyond those who are interested in the quantum reality problem. Because Wolfgang himself is such an extraordinary and unusual exemplar of a world that is very rare for us to encounter. And I think young people in particular are responding to him in quite a remarkable way. Nicole is a classic example.
Right, my co-editor.
Yeah,
Great. I want to give a shout out to Nicole.
Oh, yeah.
Spent a lot of hours in the editing room with us.
She was magnificent. I mean, one thing I can tell you about KT, she has the golden touch to discover talent. I learned this on The Principal, and I totally learned it on Quantum Reality because she found Nicole. And Nicole was fresh out of film school, maybe a year or 2 out of film school, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
She was working in production capacities.
And she was actually thinking about getting in post. She knew, everybody knows just enough editing to be dangerous.
To get into trouble, yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to say one thing is when we were editing this, because I'm a woman, and in The Principal, I tried very hard to get a woman in, which is why we have a woman narrator.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm very sad because now I kind of wish we went with Della Reese.
Yeah.
If everybody doesn't know, but we originally had her, and she's now passed on, and I'm highly respect her. And we thought we hit gold. We were like, oh, we've got her.
Yeah.
But in The Principal, we needed a Mother Earth. We needed a woman to guide us through.
Absolutely.
And Captain Janeway was very good at guiding.
Oh, she did a magnificent
through,
job. Magnificent job of that.
And in this one, we really tried to get I really wanted to get a woman's voice in again, and it was really hard. And actually, when I started the project, I had a male editor, assistant editor, because I was going to edit the whole thing myself. And then when I got in the room with Nicole, and I needed some stuff done, and I said, okay, here, why don't you help me put this together? We have to put together like a rough or something. And my other editor wasn't available. When she started putting things together, I was like, she got me. You know what I mean? And she was
totally.
just like, and her and I were syncing, and there were, Boof came back on board and did some beautiful graphics, but we had to fill in with a lot of motion graphics.
Yeah.
And she helped me out with those.
She brought something extraordinary. First of all, I must say, there was no way in the world that you had the patience to sit in that room with me. I mean, there was...
I give everybody, I give her a bonus for that one.
But Nicole was just that perfect personality that was able to put up with my incredibly weird way of...
Well, I try to explain to people how do you work with Rick? You know, you're a very strong personality. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that's what draws me to working with you. You're an artist. You grew up, you know, you were in the music world. I'm come from, you know, my grandfather was a musician. So you were a session musician a lot,
yep.
You know, in Hollywood, and we've talked about going from one session to the other.
Yeah.
There's a creativity that you have that not everybody has, you know, like on the end of Quantum Reality, and I know that you haven't said a lot about this, but you actually scored it. And on top of producing, on top of writing, and being, you know, in it, it's a beautiful score.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and it really like brings to life. There's only one song I think in there, and that is when we bring Taya in, that she sings. But everything else, I think
the Taya song is the only thing.
Right. I mean, we tried some other things. I remember.
Yeah, we did.
Oh wait, we do have the theme song in there.
Oh yeah, well that's also...
No, but that's you.
That's also right. Me. So, but I must say, while we're on this, and there's somebody else I got to give a shout out to.
Right.
And that is the incomparable Richard Robeson.
Yes.
I mean, he saved us on The Principal.
Right.
And when I was you know, there's really one reason why I scored this film. I'm not ashamed to admit it. We couldn't afford anybody. One thing I was willing to do was work real cheap.
I mean, we could have afforded some stock music.
Barely.
But we didn't. It did. This film deserved better.
It needed better.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely terrified, absolutely petrified at the very idea of taking this on top of everything else. And it was Richard Robeson. We needed a trailer, you know, at the very beginning. And I went in, and this guy just showed me a world I never even imagined existed, where you walk in and everything is set up. And all you have to do is just lay your hands on the keyboard, and you hear these sounds of depth. And do you think we could try this? Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And,
he has such a patience and such a unique way about working with people and helping you bring your project to life.
I could never, ever have done this without him. Richard, thank you.
Well, I want to go back to The Principal, because the score in The Principal, there's one part that we were in doing the narration for Kate Mulgrew.
Yes.
And we were waiting on Kate to get in, and we had set up, and you saw this piano.
Yeah, I remember. This is in New York City.
You're like, record this. You just had something in your head.
And
it was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that became the thread throughout The Principal.
That's right.
So when you said you wanted to score, I was like, he's got this. Well, because I knew also from your musician background, you had this. And then you did the trailer, and I was like,
but this is what happened. So I'm terrified. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, I'm never going to be able to pull this off. So we decided just to score the trailer.
Right.
And Richard brought me in, and in one day, one afternoon, we had 3 cues beginning to end, all of which made the film just exactly as composed and played that day. And I suddenly realized, you know, if Rich is there,
you can do it.
I can do this.
Right.
And it was just amazing.
I will give props to Richard, but I also think you should give props a little to Hans Zimmer and some of the other big composers he's worked for, because he knows how to set up.
He knows how to do it, man.
To do it the big stuff.
He knows how to make it possible for a guy like me to just walk in, and whatever I can imagine, it's right there, and it's world class. And then it just gets better as he mixes it, and as he adds his sound design, He just did an both the principal and the end.
And I think we're going to be putting together, an album for that.
Well, this is what I keep hearing. I am just completely blown away by this. That would be such an unbelievable...
I think it deserves it. The hard work that was put behind it deserves to be out there. And we're both, him and I are partners in a label, and we know how the music business works. So it's not, now it's like, to me, the filmmaking community is 10 years behind of the music community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I do in the music world that I wish I could do in the filmmaking world, but I will say that helped our success with the principal and what we're about to do here, because I took some things that we do in the music world and the grassroots we had to do.
No, it's so true. You saved the principal. That's why the principal was able to overcome the incredible assault that was launched against it, was because we were able to find those people out there who were willing to look, and they then came back and said, hey, this is nothing like.
Right.
And that became part of the story, and somehow we translated this into...
And that's what I do say when people come to me and say, are you this? Are you that? Are you, and I say, have you seen the movie?
Yeah, have you seen the movie?
Because we're not going to talk about it until you've seen the movie. We're not going to have a discussion.
That's right.
And that's $14.99 for you. Full price. No, just kidding.
I must say, one thing that's interesting to me is we haven't run into that yet on the end of quantum reality.
My thing is even because I saw the Shermer, interview, and he couldn't even answer, back about Wolfgang Smith. It's again what I say: you can't attack this man because you're going to look bad doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like trying to attack. I can't even get like a little kid or something. You can't attack the man, even if you don't believe in what he's saying. There's a respect about him that you just have to take into effect.
Exactly, and maybe that's explanatory. The other thing that's really interesting, and I learned this from Nicole too, was that I realized that I never expected this. This is something that just fell out of the sky. Was that young people, millennials and even younger, were really responding to this guy. They were seeing something in him that resonated in them. And when
because he wasn't preaching at them.
Exactly.
He wasn't telling them what people want. He wanted them to hear. He was just telling his story.
That's right.
And that's what the millennial audience wants. It's what my audience wants, is that we don't want to be told, you must believe in this, you must believe in this, blah, 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 blah. We want to learn on our own.
Yeah.
We want to bring it, kind of like what you do. You always say it. I was a high school dropout. You went and learned things, and you formed your own opinion, and your opinion is very strong. And that's I give you props for that. And you defended very well. You against a lot of people, and I feel bad because Wolfgang doesn't have to defend his art issue.
Well, but here's the thing: I would never allow Wolfgang to be dragged down into the mud pits. This is a man who has. This is a man who, by the time he was 15 years old, he had been accepted into Cornell University for simultaneous majors in physics, mathematics, and philosophy. He got all 3 degrees at age 18, for heaven's sakes. By the time he was 20, he was studying quantum physics at Purdue.
Right.
I am not going to allow this guy to be dragged down into...
Well, and I've been in the internet and online. I grew up with it. I worked in it. I worked at MySpace. I do social media, brand managing. And there's trolls. And most of them are very uneducated, actually. They just like to spout things just to spout them and start things just to start them. And I actually don't see that much on the Philos.
It's been amazing. It's been amazing. Even our trolls are interesting.
Yeah.
Because at least they have a viewpoint, and instead of just spouting nonsense, they're trying to defend a position.
Correct.
I never have a problem with that. Come on in. Because, the comment boxes at Philos, especially on our Wolfgangster page, man, you get some really interesting folks coming in there. And of course, I think that was another really important thing about the principal. At the height of the battle on the principal, we had by far the most interesting comment threads in the world.
Oh yeah. Anytime we put a piece out and had a whole bunch of comments, and you guys would go back and forth on everything. You know, we had our trolls, but they got rid of very fast. But it was so interesting
It was
to
really
read
interesting reading.
that you were like, wow, you were
And
like captivated.
the exact same thing is happening on the Wolfgangster page now. So I am hopeful that as we get closer to release, that the Philos-Sophia page, the Wolfgangster page is a private page, just for the people who've really, gotten familiar to Wolfgang's work. But, we want the Philos page to be a place where, a rambunctious debate can be joined. And I'm certainly the guy for that. I have no problem getting in against 1 on 50. Just try defending geocentrism 5 years ago before the principle came out. 1 on 50 was normal. And we're happy to do it. We enjoy it. We enjoy a good debate. But let me just say, KT, that while I completely agree with you that, in many ways our worldviews are as far apart, I nevertheless can consider you to be really one of the few people in this world that I consider not only a dear friend, but if my life was on the line, that's the call I'd make.
Right.
A dear friend, somebody who has been through the battle, where a lot of people jump ship at certain points in the battle on the principle.
Well, I'm going to tell you, on the principle, I put a lot of hard work into it to make sure that it was, even going with you, like making sure that you were not being one-sided on things.
Absolutely.
And I would push back a lot.
You sure did.
And I was like, I'm not going to let these people ruin, because it was my first theatrical.
That's exactly right.
Ruin this work that was done.
No,
that was not one-sided.
I remember, listen, we call you Mama Bear.
Right.
And the reason that we call you Mama Bear is you are Mama Bear. Everybody who knows KT essentially knows what I mean. There have been exactly 2 times in all the years I have known you that I have seen you actually angry. And the very first one was when I totally unjustly snapped at you on an issue regarding the principle. And it was astonishing. I never saw that side of you before. And it didn't take me 5 minutes to suddenly realize, oh my God, she's right. She's right. I have done a tremendous injustice to this person. And, that's a wonderful thing. When you're able to see, really see, that you have done an injustice to another person. I mean, maybe you felt it with all your might at the time. But when you stop and you reflect upon it and you look and you say, that was unjust. I can't justify that. She did not deserve that. It's a very healing thing. It's a very healing thing. So thank you for that. And plus, you've won my respect completely over the course of the 7 years we've worked on these 2 films together. I listen very carefully to what you have to say, because there have been more than a few times where I would have stepped my foot right into it. And I think that this brings exactly as you say, a broadness to the films that I'm deeply appreciative for. So anyway, so we're getting pretty close to.
I do want to say one thing for you before we go into that. The one thing that I fight is being a woman director, and not only, and this is science. This is a man's,
yeah, absolutely,
known as a man's world.
Absolutely.
Just like filmmaking is, predominantly, we're working on that. But not only once but twice, on a very hard subject, you've let a woman take the helm at directing.
I wouldn't even think of anybody else.
And even on the principle where I wasn't the first.
You were my second choice because I was stupid.
But that was a woman too.
That was a woman too.
That, and I think this is very interesting that the audience should know, is that you allowed a woman filmmaker to help you tell the story, and now we have a woman editor too. On this one,
Oh yeah, and boy, that's a big flavor for this.
Right, and there, we went back to trying really hard to get a woman in, and I just want to bring this up, is that in the second act, that's mine and Nicole's. Rick is the science.
Yeah, no, you got that. I completely agree.
When I learned of the story of Taya, and I had to get her in there.
Yeah.
And there was a recent interview with Wolfgang that'll be coming out, And the way he talks about her is so respectful. This is a woman, you know, that was very well respected.
Oh, absolutely.
And very knowledgeable and very smart woman.
She was a freaking professor of mathematics.
Exactly.
I mean, wow.
And, you know, I always say behind every great man is a great woman.
That's right.
You know?
That's absolutely right.
And I wanted to get that across. Because not only was, when I met Wolfgang, we actually talked about it, the loss, they were together for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted everybody to feel what this man felt about his wife.
And it's so beautiful.
Even if you don't understand the science and you don't even care, you just need go watch the second act. Just watch his biography section, because not only do we have Taya in there, and we have a song that she sings.
Oh,
The first time I heard it, I said it's in the film.
Yeah, it's beautiful. She wrote it about Wolfgang.
He also, most of the photography in the biography section is him.
That's right.
And I found very interesting too is his trip to India.
Oh, yeah.
And his talk about enlightenment, because I'm in more, that's more my side. And I was so enamored, because I always say you don't talk about religion and stuff unless you've gone and learned from different aspects of it. And I just loved listening to him about that. You know?
I must say that for me, the power of that second act is that is the deep insight into, look, for me, yeah, it is about the science. This man has resolved the quantum enigma. I think it is going to have a world historical impact in the centuries to come. But why? Why him?
Mm-hmm.
What was it about him? And it is that second act that shows us the broadness of the influences, the trip to India, the deep, deep dive into the Hindu philosophies, and then Taya entering his life and bringing him back to his Catholic roots. And he refuses to turn around and dismiss or disdain what he learned in India. He holds it to this day. And this is what gives him this broadness. There's a broadness of heart, a broadness of mind in Wolfgang that I think irritates even traditionalist Catholics. I've seen get very irritated by the man. I just think that this is a deep insight into why he was able to resolve this quantum enigma, the broadness of his thought and the broadness of his lived experience, trying to make living contact with the remnants of these ancient wisdom traditions.
And I also think, besides that, the influence of his wife.
Oh, and absolutely.
You know, I mean, he basically says, you know, I was not going to write, you know.
Exactly.
I wasn't going to do it. He was just going around. He was a little, I call it like Professor Playboy.
Yeah, no, he couldn't
around the world,
He said, one of my favorite lines is when he came back from India, he says, I was no longer a Western man. He said, I had no intention, right? Why should you write?
Right.
I mean, well, what's the point? It's all Maya. It's all illusion.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when he was writing and she was around.
Oh, yeah. It would have been amazing. It would have been just, I almost got to meet Taya. I missed it by a week because she was actually doing better. She had health problems. I remember that when she first went into the hospital, we put it out and there were thousands of people praying for her. And she got out of what seemed to be, a final decline. And I spoke with her once on the phone, and I was going to get to meet her, and I was going to come up the next week, and then it happened, and she fell. But to hear Wolfgang speak of her that first interview, it's unforgettable. It's just unforgettable.
And I will say, because I want to bring this up, around that time, I had lost my grandmother.
Yeah.
And I just felt a connection with him because of it. Because of I had respect for my grandmother. And she was a very powerful woman. And when he was talking about Taya, the one thing I like about, he's old school, but he has such a respect for women.
Oh, yeah. He loves womanhood in a way that you could understand why Taya, a woman of such regality, I mean, this was woman who had every man. She could have had any man in the world she wanted, right?
Right.
Beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
a doctorate in mathematics. I mean, everything you could ask for. And she chose Wolfgang. And because I think she understood just what you understand about
Mm-hmm.
it, his almost sacred love
Mm-hmm.
for womanhood.
It's not even a love, it's a respect,
Yeah.
which is very hard to find nowadays, too. Plus, me and him got along because he's a dog person.
Yeah, oh, he really is.
And we had great discussions, which we even put, there's a couple of pictures in there of him and his dog,
of
you know?
his beloved German Shepherd. Before Taya came along, that was the household. Wolfgang
Right.
and his beloved German Shepherd. I guess there were some sheep around the property somewhere, too. Well, anyway, KT, I want to thank you so much for coming up today and allowing us, for the very first time, to really meet you. You've had such a fundamental role in both the principle and now in the end of quantum reality. May I say, Madam Director, congratulations for pulling off your second theatrical release.
And that reminds us, January 10th?
January 10th.
We're opening, and please spread the word. Come to theendofquantumreality.com and tell us where you want to see it.
Absolutely. That's very important because...
Follow us on Facebook, the Philos-Sophia
Initiative. On the Philos-Sophia Initiative page. And remember, we're booking right now.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be at least 10 cities. And if we do well, it could be more than that. But we're going to have at least 10 cities. Some of them are already pretty much baked into the cake. One of them, well, we can't announce it yet, but it's booked.
Yeah.
And we're going to be booking more in the next few weeks. Let us know if this is something that you are interested in, if this is something that, especially those of you who've seen the principle and are wondering what we might come up with to follow it. Let us know. Let us know what city you would like us to see if we can get the film booked into. And again, thank you so much, Madam Director. And stay tuned for an upcoming, very interesting series of episodes of the video blog. We will be turning our attention to matters of scientific interest with some very interesting guests. So stay tuned, sign up for updates, and we'll see you next time on the End of Quantum Reality video blog.
Bye-bye.
Bye.